predator glitch. You're home alone. It's late. A floorboard creaks upstairs. In an instant, your heart is hammering, your senses are on high alert, and you are absolutely certain you are not alone. That feeling, that primal, immediate assumption of a presence, isn't a flaw in your thinking. It's your brain's most ancient survival software running perfectly. It's called the Hyperactive Agency Detection Device, or HADD. It's a term coined by evolutionary psychologists to describe a fundamental bias in our cognition, the tendency to assume that any ambiguous event, sound, or shape is caused by a conscious agent. For our ancestors on the savannah, this was a life-saving feature. The rustle in the grass wasn't the wind, it was a lion. The shadow in the periphery wasn't a tree branch, it was a rival tribesman. The cost of a false positive, thinking the wind is a lion, was a moment of pointless fear. The cost of a false negative, thinking a lion is the wind, was death. Evolution, playing the odds, hardwired our brains to be jumpy, paranoid, and to see agency everywhere. In our modern, predator-free homes, this ancient software still runs in the background. Now, the ambiguous stimuli aren't lions in the grass, they're the hum of a refrigerator, the settling of a house, a curtain moving in a draft. The HADD receives this noisy, random data and does what it was designed to do. It finds an agent. It creates a story. It invents a ghost. The cold spot in the hallway, the misplaced keys, the faint whisper that might just be the pipes. These are the raw materials your brain uses to construct a supernatural narrative. Your brain isn't haunted, it's just running an outdated operating system that sees predators in the static of everyday life. This isn't a sign of delusion. It's a sign that your evolutionary inheritance is working exactly as intended, turning the random noise of the world into the chilling sensation of a deliberate, unseen presence. The God helmet. What if you could put on a helmet and, with the flip of a switch, feel the undeniable presence of God, an angel, or a demon in the room with you? This isn't science fiction. It's the basis of one of the most controversial and fascinating experiments in neuroscience, conducted by Dr. Michael Persinger in the 1980s. Persinger developed a device, nicknamed the God helmet, that generated weak, complex magnetic fields and applied them to the temporal lobes of the brain, the regions just above your ears responsible for processing emotions, memory, and sensory input. He claimed that by stimulating this area, he could artificially induce profound spiritual and mystical experiences in ordinary people, right there in his lab. His test subjects, sitting in a silent, dark, acoustic chamber, reported a range of bizarre sensations. The most common was that sensed presence, an overwhelming feeling that another conscious being was in the room with them. Some identified this presence as a deceased relative, a guardian angel, or even God. Persinger's theory was that our sense of self is a construct, a story told between the left and right hemispheres of our brain. He believed his helmet could disrupt this internal dialogue. By stimulating the right temporal lobe, he could create a secondary sense of self that the dominant left hemisphere would then interpret as a separate external entity. Your brain, in its confusion, literally creates a ghost out of your own divided consciousness. While the God helmet's results are highly debated and have been difficult to replicate, its core idea is profound. It suggests the most sacred and terrifying experience of our lives, visitations from the divine or the demonic, might not be messages from another world, but rather a form of neural static, a temporary glitch in the hardware that splits our sense of self in two, forcing us to meet the ghost of our own mind. Fear frequency. Imagine standing in a room and being overcome with a sudden, inexplicable wave of anxiety and dread. You see a fleeting gray shape in the corner of your vision, and a deep chill runs down your spine. The room is haunted, right? Maybe. Or maybe you're just being vibrated. This is the eerie world of infrasound, sound waves at a frequency below 20 hertz, just beneath the threshold of human hearing. While you can't consciously hear it, your body can feel it. And one of the things it does is resonate with human eyeballs. Engineer Vic Tandy was working in a lab that was rumored to be haunted when he experienced these exact sensations. The mystery was solved when he discovered a new fan was emitting a silent, powerful hum at precisely 18.98 hertz. This fear frequency, as it's sometimes called, was vibrating his eyeballs, causing distortions in his peripheral vision, the ghostly gray shapes. The low-frequency vibrations were also creating the physical sensations of anxiety and fear. This phenomenon has been proposed as a rational explanation for countless hauntings. Many haunted locations, such as old castles, cathedrals with massive pipe organs, and drafty corridors, are perfect environments for generating infrasound. The wind blowing over a chimney, large resonant structures, or faulty machinery can all create these low-frequency vibrations that put the human body on edge. The cold spots often reported by ghost hunters could simply be a psychological reaction to the primal fear induced by the sound, or a related physical phenomenon. It suggests that some ghosts aren't spirits of the dead, but are instead phantoms created by the physics of sound, turning the very air around us into an invisible instrument that plays upon our deepest, most primal fears. The haunting isn't in the house, it's in the frequency. Poisoned hauntings. In 1921, a strange and terrifying story was published in the American Journal of Ophthalmology. A family, known only as the H family, had moved into a new home and was immediately plagued by a series of disturbing, supernatural events. They heard furniture moving on its own, footsteps in empty rooms, and felt the constant, unnerving presence of unseen entities. They were physically assaulted by phantoms in their sleep and saw ghostly apparitions. The family was on the verge of fleeing their home in terror. A doctor, W.H. Wilmer, investigated their case. He didn't call an exorcist. He checked the furnace. He found it was severely damaged and had been leaking carbon monoxide, a colorless, odorless gas, throughout the house for weeks. The family wasn't being haunted. They were being slowly poisoned, and the ghosts were vivid, complex hallucinations produced by their oxygen-starved brains. This case has become the textbook example of how an environmental factor can perfectly mimic a classic haunting. Carbon monoxide poisoning causes a wide range of neurological symptoms, including headaches, confusion, auditory and visual hallucinations, paranoia, and feelings of dread. A checklist of classic paranormal phenomena. It makes you wonder how many historical accounts of haunted houses or demonic possessions were actually tragic, undiagnosed cases of poisoning from a faulty fireplace or a poorly ventilated stove. The brain, when deprived of oxygen, will desperately try to make sense of its own malfunction. It will take its confusion, its fear, and its distorted sensory input and weave it into a coherent external story. The story it tells is often the one most readily available in our culture, the story of a haunting. It's a chilling reminder that the most terrifying phantoms are often the ones written by the silent ghostwriter of our own malfunctioning biology. Shadow people. You wake up in the middle of the night, but you can't move a muscle. You are completely paralyzed, your body locked in place. Your mind is wide awake, filled with a terrifying, primal fear. Then you see it. A dark, featureless figure, a humanoid shape of pure black standing in the corner of your room, or worse, sitting on your chest, crushing the air from your lungs. This is the terrifyingly common experience of sleep paralysis, and the entity is known around the world as the shadow person. For centuries, this experience was explained as a visit from a demon, an incubus, or an evil spirit. Today, neuroscience has a different but no less frightening explanation. Sleep paralysis occurs when your brain wakes up before your body does. During REM sleep, the stage where you dream, a chemical called glycine is released, switching off your voluntary muscles to prevent you from acting out your dreams. Occasionally, your conscious mind reboots before this paralysis wears off. You are now in a waking nightmare, fully aware but trapped inside an immobile body. The brain's threat detection circuits, located in the amygdala, go into overdrive. Faced with the terrifying sensation of being paralyzed and helpless, your brain does what it does best. It invents an agent to explain the feeling. It projects a physical source for its terror. In this half-dream state, it digs into our deepest archetypal fears and pulls out the shadow person, a blank, menacing figure that becomes the focus of our panic. The feeling of pressure on the chest is likely a result of your conscious mind trying to control your breathing, which is still in its shallow, automatic REM sleep pattern. The brain interprets this struggle as an external weight. The shadow person isn't an invader from another dimension. It's a phantom created by your own mind to make sense of a terrifying biological glitch. God's in your head. What if thousands of years ago humans didn't think the way we do now? What if they didn't have an internal introspective consciousness and instead experienced their own thoughts as commands from an external voice? This is the radical and fascinating theory of the bicameral mind, proposed by psychologist Julian Jaynes in 1976. Jaynes argued that until about 3,000 years ago, the human mind was split into two parts, a doing part in the left hemisphere and a directing part in the right hemisphere. When faced with a novel situation, the right hemisphere would generate a command which the left hemisphere would experience as an auditory hallucination, the voice of a god, a king, or an ancestor. This, he claimed, was the origin of religion. The statues in ancient temples weren't just symbols, they were conduits for these internal voices, giving them a physical location. Jaynes pointed to ancient texts like the Iliad, where characters don't sit and ponder their decisions. They are constantly being told what to do by various gods. There is no language for introspection, for a private inner world. According to Jaynes, this bicameral mentality began to break down during the Bronze Age collapse as large-scale societies became too complex. The external voices became unreliable, and a new, unified consciousness had to emerge, the introspective, self-aware mind we have today. The remnants of the bicameral mind, he argued, can still be seen in phenomena like schizophrenia, religious glossolalia, speaking in tongues, and the visions of prophets. The theory is highly speculative and not accepted by mainstream science, but it offers a stunning reinterpretation of our history. It suggests that the gods of our ancestors weren't supernatural beings in the sky, they were the ghost of the right hemisphere, a disembodied part of our own cognition speaking to us from across the corpus callosum. Grief ghosts. Your brain has a fact-checker. Deep in your frontal lobes is a network responsible for reality testing, constantly evaluating your perceptions and beliefs to distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. It's the part of your brain that tells you the monster in a movie isn't real, or that the dream you had last night didn't actually happen. But sometimes this system can be temporarily weakened or bypassed. This can happen due to extreme stress, trauma, sleep deprivation, or during certain religious rituals that involve chanting, dancing, and sensory overload. When your reality testing circuits are offline, the line between internal thought and external reality begins to blur. A vivid thought can feel like a real memory. An imagined voice can sound like a real whisper. This is particularly relevant in cases of grief. After losing a loved one, it is incredibly common for people to see, hear, or feel the presence of the deceased. From a neurological perspective, the brain has a powerful predictive model of that person, their voice, their habits, their presence. When they die, that model is suddenly in conflict with reality. The grieving brain, under immense emotional stress and with its reality testing temporarily compromised, can misfire, causing the predictive model to manifest as a sensory experience. The ghost is a projection of the brain's own deeply ingrained memory, a neural echo of a person who is gone.
This isn't a sign of madness. It's a testament to the brain's profound capacity for connection and its struggle to update its own internal map of the world when that map is violently torn apart.
Dying brain's heaven. The near-death experience, or NDE, is one of the most powerful sources of spiritual belief. People from all cultures report a similar journey, leaving their body, traveling through a tunnel towards a bright light, meeting deceased relatives or beings of light, and experiencing a profound sense of peace and cosmic unity. For many, this is irrefutable proof of an afterlife. Neuroscience, however, offers a biological script that maps onto this spiritual journey with eerie precision. The tunnel of light can be explained by oxygen deprivation in the visual cortex. As the brain begins to shut down, peripheral vision is lost first, creating a tunnel effect, while the central vision remains, often perceived as a bright light. The out-of-body sensation may be caused by a disruption in the temporoparietal junction, a brain region that integrates sensory information to create our sense of physical self. When it malfunctions, you can feel like you're floating near the ceiling. The overwhelming feelings of euphoria and peace can be attributed to a massive release of endorphins and other neurochemicals as the brain responds to extreme stress and trauma. The life review, a rapid-fire playback of one's most significant memories, could be triggered by the temporal lobe as it begins to shut down. The brain isn't showing you a highlight reel for a spiritual judgment, it's experiencing a cascade of neural firings in its memory centers. While this biological explanation doesn't necessarily disprove a spiritual one, it demonstrates that the entire complex narrative of the NDE can be plausibly explained by the predictable sequence of a brain in crisis. The journey to the afterlife may not be a journey outward, but a final, spectacular journey inward, as the brain's reality engine puts on its last and most profound show.
Viral ghosts. In 1518, a woman named Frau Trophia stepped into a street in Strasbourg and began to dance. She didn't stop. Within a week, dozens had joined her, and within a month, hundreds were dancing uncontrollably in the streets, some until they collapsed or even died from exhaustion. This was the dancing plague, a famous case of what is now understood as mass psychogenic illness or collective hysteria. It's a phenomenon where psychological distress manifests as physical symptoms and spreads rapidly through a group of people with no infectious agent involved. It's, in essence, a contagious hallucination. Our brains are social organs, profoundly influenced by the people around us. Our sense of reality is, to a large extent, a consensus. If everyone around you believes a building is haunted, you are far more likely to interpret ambiguous noises and shadows as paranormal evidence. This can explain large-scale hauntings, witch crazes like the Salem witch trials, and modern internet phenomena like Slender Man sightings. One person has an ambiguous experience, interprets it through a supernatural lens, and shares their story with conviction. Others, primed by suggestion, begin to have similar experiences, reinforcing the collective belief. The ghost isn't a single entity, it's a shared idea that takes on a life of its own, a virus of the mind that spreads through social networks. The power of suggestion is so strong it can create physical sensations, visual apparitions, and shared memories of events that never happened. The source of the haunting isn't in the walls of the house, but in the powerful, suggestible, and deeply interconnected web of the human social brain.
Brain's ghost story. Let's tie it all together. The brain's primary job is not to give you a truthful, one-to-one representation of reality. Its job is to keep you alive. To do this, it takes the chaotic, messy, and often incomplete data from your senses and aggressively filters and interprets it, weaving it into a coherent story, a narrative that helps you predict what will happen next. It is first and foremost a storytelling machine. It hates ambiguity and abhors a vacuum of meaning. When faced with an unexplainable event, a random noise, a strange feeling, a trick of the light, it will not simply accept "I don't know."
It will access its vast library of cultural narratives, personal memories, and evolutionary biases, and it will write a cause. And for millennia, one of the most compelling and readily available causes has been the world of spirits, ghosts, and gods. The ghosts we experience are not external entities invading our reality. They are artifacts of our own neural processing. They are the misfiring of our agency detection circuits, the echoes of our brain's internal dialogue, the hallucinations of our oxygen-starved neurons, the phantoms of our paralyzed sleep, and the contagious ideas of our social networks. Acknowledging this doesn't make the universe any less mysterious. In fact, it makes it more so. It reveals that the most profound mystery of all is not what lies in the haunted house down the street, but what lies behind your own eyes. You are living inside the most advanced simulation in the known universe, a story